Well, guys, I've been writing a bunch of stuff down. I've been thinking about all this firearm debate and gun control, and tell you what, these people are nuts in the head. The Second Amendment is a recognition of the dangers of a standing army. It proposes to recognize that every citizen has a right to keep and bear the same type of basic arms as a soldier in a modern military. A militia embodies all able-bodied men over the age of 16. Therefore, a militia will always outnumber a standing army by at least 20 to 1. If this militia is armed with the weapons similar to those used by the individuals compromising that standing army, it will be impossible for that standing army to inflict the will of a tyrannical government upon the people. The Second Amendment guarantees behind all, the Second Amendment is the guarantee behind all the other articles in the Bill of Rights. Is the ultimate guarantee that the citizens of the United States can remain free. If you look around, you'll see that the militia and militia weapons were, by definition, the personal arms of the private citizen, and therefore, whether or not that particular weapon was issued to Army troops is irrelevant. I was trying to get that across yesterday when I was saying, the Army's trained with their hands, their bayonets, their trench tools. Just remember, that has no bearing on the Second Amendment, because the definitions of militia weapons were the personal arms of the private citizen. And therefore, whether or not a particular weapon was issued to Army troops is irrelevant. I want to go through here. There's a couple places in here that the Second Amendment itself, if you start to think back like in the 1860s, now the Negroes back then were denied the right to have firearms by certain states. That left them defenseless. They couldn't protect their families, they couldn't protect their homes, and I mean that just made it, they were made defenseless by a regime of state laws. They were denied the common right to keep and bear arms. Remember that. If you're a citizen of the United States, you should have firearms. No ifs, ands, or buts. I had something else I wanted to put in here, inject. Oh yeah, maybe Chief Justice Taney's opinion in Dred Scott, where he suggested that an uncontroversial attribute of citizenship, in addition to the right to migrate from one state to another, was the right to possess arms. The logic of Taney's argument at this point seems to be because it was inconceivable that the framers would have genuinely enough and would have imagined blacks having the right to possess arms. It followed that they could not envision them as becoming citizens, since citizenship entailed that right. He says the right to arms is it's a traditional desirability, and the small states should preserve that Republican liberty. But he transformed this debate to arguing that the states would be less likely to preserve liberty if they could so easily fall under the sway of a local dominant factor whereas the extended public would guard against this danger. Yep. As the nationalization of the Bill of Rights has been deemed necessary in order to protect popular liberty against state depredation. They're trying to take your arms away, and they are, they're not allowed to do that. Something else I had something down here, but that definition of the militia weapons, I mean, they are personal arms of the private citizen, and therefore whether a particular weapon is issued to an army of any kind is irrelevant. You know, our politicians have a widespread misunderstanding of the Constitution, whereas the people, the common people, have a widespread understanding of the Second Amendment. We know what it's there for. Is to protect us from a tyrannical government in any way, shape, or form. They're God-given rights. They can't be taken away. You know, if things don't go correctly here, I'm suggesting, you know, those people that occupied Wall Street, you know, to protest, one of the reasons it failed is because they didn't have the resolve. They were paid. They didn't have it in their hearts and minds to go there to win. They went there to get paid. Well, we could have another protest. We could all start heading to Washington, D.C. We'd have to be a little bit more careful. You know, that bonus march back in 1932, I mean, they were all fine and dandy there till somebody decided, well, to call in the Army. Well, the Army didn't bother them because these guys were all veterans. And they weren't afraid of, you know, tear gas and stuff like that. But they brought in tanks. You know, tanks to run them over. They brought in cavalry. And these guys with their swords, they hit them on the back side of the blade so they wouldn't, you know, slice them up. But they still went in there and broke up that camp. And we can't allow that. You go in there peacefully, and you're on public property, which you paid for. You paid for it in blood. You paid for it in death. That land's yours. It's not those people up there. The government belongs to the people. We could get somebody to back us financially, sponsor us, if you will, if there's any of them out there left that has American values. And we could go there, and we have the resolve to stay, to make sure that they remove all the laws, all the gun laws that are on the books right now. All those crime bills and things they put in there since 1968 from 1968 until 2018 have them removed. We won't have to go through the courts. We will have the Congress and the Senate pass it to remove them, that obstruction that hinders American people. You know, we have the right to migrate, but if you are migrating, you know, you got to take your firearms with you. But this interstate transportation of, you know, that hinders you right there. We're being hindered, restricted, and that's not the idea of how the country was set up in the name of freedom or in the heartfelt sensation of freedom. You're supposed to be a free man. You shouldn't be hindered by all the obstructions they put out there. So if we do occupy D.C., we've got to make it a point to tell everybody up there that we will not have anybody disrupt them like they did back in 32. No federal officials, no state officials, no agencies, and they must also keep people away from the protesters there, because anything that happens to those protesters that we send there we will hold them personally accountable. Don't matter if they had a dime in it. If somebody is, if they let people come in there to disrupt it, any kind of gangs or anybody, we will hold them accountable right then and there. No pissing around. We're there for keep. We have the resolve to do it. We're not being paid to do it. We're doing it for our kids' future, our grandkids' future. And even if the politicians don't understand it, it's their future too. No more firearm law. It's asinine. It doesn't do anything. It hinders the American people. Those laws don't do anything to protect you, and they never will. They don't work. That's why they keep throwing more laws at the problem to try and fix it. It doesn't work. You know, they talk about violence. You know how things get started? Okay, first off, government took God out of school. Then they made it illegal to punish the kid while they're in grade school. Oh no, you can't touch the kids, you can't discipline them. Okay, and then by the time that these kids get into high school, there's no respect for the teachers at all. That's why the teachers getting beat up all the time, because the kids weren't put in their place a long time ago. They're not going to be held accountable, so they think they can do what they want. Kind of like what the politicians are doing with our money, just throwing it here and there. They're not accountable. Well, we're telling you what. We're going to put this country back into its proper place. We will make America great. We don't need a hat to tell us it's great. We don't need somebody spouting their mouth saying it's going to be great. The people itself of this country will make it great again. Whether they're black, purple, white, it don't matter. We're Americans. We always have been. Now, Obama and them, they were trying to stir up this racist stuff, and that was gone a long time ago. But they got to keep nitpicking. Well, we'll get these young kids to protest, you know, Black Lives Matter and this. It's a bunch of crap. All you're doing, you're evoking communist agendas. You know, get these kids to protest. Get everybody to protest. Let them bitch about it. It don't work. We're Americans. We stick together. We are united. This is the United States of America. We love our country, but we won't be stepped on. Thanks for watching.